We're in this start here, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it off by putting in some comments and getting my different modes defined. So I know I've got a warm-up mode. I know I've got a stabilize mode. I'm looking for a generation mode. Let's do a cool down mode. We're gonna do idle mode. And last and certainly least is our fault mode. Okay, the first thing I know we need to do is check for that system start button and trigger the sequence. So let's start with that. That's going to be an A for and we're looking for the system start push button. That's it right there. And the next thing we're looking for is to see if that is a front positive. So we're going to try to one-shot that. So FP, and let's give it a storage bit of OS1. We'll right-click and define as we go. Local static bool. Gotcha. Moving on, the other thing we want to check for is we want to make sure we're in idle mode. So and idle mode, and if all that's the case, then we're going to set our bit, and that's going to be our not system, it's going to be our start sequence. So start sequence bit, got it. And the way that's going to work is whether this all comes back as true or false, it's going to set that value to this bit. So the first time that all that becomes true, it's going to set the bit, but then the next time it comes around, we won't be in idle mode anymore, so we'll end up with a false when we come to set our bit, and boom, that's going to take care of itself. So we've got the first part of this taken care of. Now let's jump into the next one, and now we're setting our RPMs to our baffle PID, I believe. So let's come back up here. Yeah, RPM and warm-up RPM are going into the baffle. So let's handle that. We're going to load warm-up RPM, and we're going to transfer that to the baffle set point. So baffle PID set point. Then we're going to load normal RPM, and we're going to transfer that to the baffle PID input. Okay, so done. What's next? Now we want to set our oil pump VFD and our baffle control. So let's start with set, and then we're going to S oil pump VFD control, and we're going to set baffle control. Okay, now that's going to set both of those. Let's jump out and see what the next piece is. We want to set the value for our VFD set point. All right, so let's come over here, and now we want to load. And now we want to load, and we're looking for our warm-up VFD percent, and we're going to transfer that to VFD set point. Got it. What was next? Now we start our timing sequence to do our warm-up transition once the oil temp is above set point for a certain amount of time. So let's load oil temp. Then we want to load warm-up oil temp set point, and I guess that's just warm-up oil temp. And then we're going to evaluate to see if it's greater than. And if it is greater than, and I know I need some jumps in here and stuff like that, but right now I'm just flowing out the logic, and I'll break it up and create all the jumps and labels afterwards. So anyway, assuming that yes, it is greater, then we want to pull our convert time, and we're going to convert our warm-up time delay set point to our TI1, that's time 1, or yeah, something like that. And we'll define that as local temp time. Got it. Next thing we want to do is call our timer. So let's find timers over here in our instruction palette. Pull in a TON and make sure that this thing is set for time. Well, I love all those annoying pop-ups. They're so helpful. And this guy is going to be true. Our preset time is going to be our TI1 that we created. Our output bit, this is going to be warm-up delay trigger, which we'll define as a local temp bool. And yes, that's so helpful. Thank you. And then we want another time value here for our elapsed time, and we'll define that also as a local time. Okay, so now that we've got the timer and the timer's running, we need a way to reset the timer, and we also need to evaluate a jump to according to when that guy is true. So let's go ahead and evaluate that first. We will start with an and load our warm-up delay trigger. And at that point, assuming that yes, we've triggered it, then what are we going to do? We're going to set our bit, and that's going to be our warm-up transition. Got it. So right there, I think we've got the foundation of this logic. So now let's figure this out. We want this to run all the time. So that's freestanding, no problem. This right here, we're going to run that. Let's see, we're going to load it and transfer. Now this we only want to happen when we're actually in warm-up mode. So let's come up here and let's clear out our register, and then we're going to check and see if we're in warm-up mode. So and warm-up mode. And if we are in warm-up mode, then we're going to JC to warm-up mode as a label. And let's copy that, come down here, and actually I'll put that before this load, so warm-up mode will be right there. And if we're not in warm-up mode, then let's see where we do need to go. So we can just handle all of our direction right here. So let's do a CLR, and we'll load generation mode. So generation mode, and then we will JC to generation mode, and then we'll clear the register, and then we'll load cooldown mode. Then we will JC to cooldown mode, clear the register, and idle mode. JC to idle mode, clear the register, and JC end of line. And actually we don't need a JC and a clear there, do we? Let's grab all that and let's just jump unconditionally. Okay, so we've got a warm-up mode there. And did we put a stabilize mode? No, we did not. So CLR, and now we're going to look for and stabilize mode, JC stabilize mode. Okay, so now we've got it in there, and let's go ahead and punch those labels. Stabilize mode, colon, and I'm going to just put block ends in there for right now because that's going to keep me from getting a bunch of errors. Generation mode, colon, BE. Cooldown mode, colon, BE. Idle mode, colon, BE. And fault mode, we're going to, since we can't get here by checking a fault mode bit, we're going to put this under end of line, and I'll put the BE. Okay, so we've got no errors and we've got some structure laid out for our code. So let's pretend we've jumped into our warm-up mode. The first thing we're going to do is load our warm-up RPM, transfer it, load our RPM, transfer that into the PID. So we've set up our PID. We've got all this set stuff done. We're setting our controls, loading our percent, transferring that into the VFD, loading our oil temp warm-up, and now here's what we need to do. If those two things are true, we need a JC, and this is going to be warm-up time. And let's come down here, create that label, warm-up time colon, and I need to put that call up on that line, so got it. Okay, so if we jump to warm-up time, then we need to come in here and evaluate. So, and we're going to have a JU somewhere up there, so I'll just put that there and leave it red. That'll remind us to come back to it. So, okay, when we come in here, we are transferring our time delay set point, then we're calling our timer, we're running our timer, and what happens at the end here. So we're evaluating to see if we've actually got that delay trigger, and if so, we're setting this transition, and we're going to set this transition either way. So what else are we doing? We're setting the transition, and we also want to reset our timer. So let's come over here and pull in our reset for the timer. Copy our timer name, which is right here. Paste that into our reset right there. Okay, and let's define what kind of timer it is. It's an IEC timer. Alright, so we're calling the reset, we're resetting our timer, we've set our transition, and is there anything else we need to do? No, I don't think so. So we need to reset that transition at some point, but I don't think that's going to happen inside of this block. So we're, instead of jumping to warm-up time, if we've decided that we don't need to evaluate our time, but we're still in warm-up mode, at that point, I think it's safe to jump to stabilize mode. So let's copy that, come up here and paste our jump to stabilize mode. And we still need to reset that transition bit right there. So where are we going to do that? And I guess we can go ahead and have that happen first thing in stabilize mode. So when we're in stabilize mode, the first thing we will do is reset, and that will be our warm-up transition. Okay, so we're going to reset the warm-up transition and then start our stabilized logic, and the first part of that, I believe, is setting our PID up. Yes, so we're going to set that up for current and a stabilized value coming in. So we can go ahead and, where do we have that logic? I know we've got that up here somewhere under warm-up. Here we go, load and transfer. So let's copy that and bring it down, paste it in, and what are we going to load? We're going to load our stabilized kilowatt set point and transfer that to our baffle PID, oh no, not our input, sorry, our baffle set point. Then we're going to load current and transfer that to our baffle input. So now we're looking at current and controlling our baffle and making it attain that stabilized kilowatt value. So what else is happening in stabilize? Other than that, we're just waiting for that current to get within that plus or minus 5 kilowatt range so that we can hold it for a few seconds and transition out. Simple. So we need another call to a timer, but first we need to put up that logic that evaluates that set point and sees if we're in range. So let's start by, we're going to load the value of, not warm up, but stabilize kilowatt set point. Then we're going to load the value of 5. And then we're going to plus I to add those two together. And then we're going to transfer that to temp value 1. And we need to define that as local int. Got it? And then we need to do the same thing all over again. So let's copy all of that. Control C, Control V. We're loading our stabilized kilowatt set point again. We're loading 5 again. Only now instead of plus I, it's going to be minus I. And we're going to be transferring that to TV2. Let's define that tag as an int, local temp. Got it? And now we need to evaluate and see whether or not our current value is within that range. So let's load current, and then we're going to load TV1, and then we're going to say is current less than. So less than I. And assuming that's true, we're going to set a local bool. So this will be LB1, or actually I could call that TB1, temporary bool. And come on, there we go. Man, I just can't get it. Come on. Okay, STB1. Perfect, finally. So let's define that. That's going to be a local temp bool. And same thing, let's copy the last two loads. Copy, paste it in. Now we're looking at current and TV2, and we're looking to see if we are greater than TV2. And if so, we're going to also say and LB1. So we're now checking to see if both of these conditions are true. Not LB, we decided on TB1. So and TB1. And if all of that is true, then we can jump to our stabilized timer. So is that what we call it? We call it just time. So we're going to JC to stabilize time. And now let's just copy this whole warm-up time routine, because I'm sure this is going to want to look pretty similar to that. So let's paste it in and rename it. to stabilize time. And the first thing we're doing, we're calling convert time, but now we want our stabilized delay set point, and we're going to save that, or convert it and save it to TI3. Let's define that as local time. Perfect, and temporary is good. And then we need to wipe out this timer, or we could just rename the timer. So let's just pop that up to 35 and hit OK. And time is going to be true. Our preset time is the TI3 that we just created. And okay, we're now going to set not a warm-up delay time trigger, but a stabilized delay trigger. Define that as a local temp bool. And we need TI4 down here. For our elapsed time, that's going to be local time, good. And now we're going to load that stabilized trigger. Control C, Control V. And we're going to set our stabilized transition. So, got it? And after we do all that, we've got a call reset timer 35, and I got to admit, I'm not loving this logic, because let's go up here and look at it. What this is saying is that after we call our timer, we're going to come down here and we're going to reset it every single time, and that's not what we want to happen. So on this, that's when we need to decide to go to one of two places. Either we go to a place where we reset the timer, or we go to a place where we don't reset the timer. So if we've got the trigger, then we need to set the transition, so we're good with that. And then we need to call the reset, but that's going to be conditional. So on this AND trigger, let's do a JC to warm up exit. Come down here and create that warm up exit. And that is when we will set our trigger and reset that timer. And I will go ahead and put another call to reset that timer right up here where we jump into warm-up time. Well, what if we don't jump into warm-up time? Well, then we also want to reset the trigger. So that will reset it if those conditions aren't true. And we'll also reset that if those conditions are true and we end up transitioning out. Okay, that got a little more complicated, but I think that's what we need. So let's take that call to reset, copy that, and we know we're jumping conditionally to stabilize time here. Otherwise, let's call our reset timer, and then we're going to be jumping unconditionally into our next block, which is generation mode. And I think that's what we did up here, wasn't it? Yeah, jumped unconditionally into stabilized mode. And then we need to incorporate that exit bit right there. So I'm going to just copy all of this, Control C, and come down here and paste that in under my timer. So, well, maybe I don't need to. Let's see. Let's just take that warm up, and we're going to punch that in right here, warm up exit. We'll rename that to stabilize exit. And down here, we're resetting that timer, so we don't need that call there. And what else is happening there? That's where we're setting our transition. So we're going to do that here and not here. So we're loading right here this trigger bit, and that's when we're going to JC to stabilize exit. Otherwise, we're going to jump unconditionally to generation mode. And I think that's what we had up here, right? And then we're going to jump conditionally to warm up exit. Otherwise, we need to jump unconditionally to stabilize mode. I know I'm jumping around a lot. I know this is really hard to follow, but that's the problem. I did this, missed some things, started doing this, realized I missed some things, and now I'm still kind of hashing it out in my mind while I'm jumping back and forth between all of this stuff. So I know it's painful, and I apologize for that, but hopefully I'll have something working at the end, and you'll be able to look at it and reverse engineer it and say, okay, yeah, now it makes sense to me. All right, so now we're coming into our generation mode, and I'm going to start with, I'm going to just copy everything from my stabilize mode. So let's come all the way up here, copy that. And then I'm just going to paste that into the generation mode and see what things I can just change along the way. So first thing I need to do is backspace that to get it on the same line. And it's the stabilize transition I need to be resetting. So let's reset that. And for generation mode, we're not doing any of these transfers and setting up the PID any differently. I think all we're doing is closing the interlock and waiting for a push button, right? Yeah, so that's a real easy one. So, wow, we can just dump like all of this up to here. And this AND is now going to be looking for the system stop push button. But before that, let's see, we're resetting our stabilize transition. Then we're going to put set into our register, and we're going to set our station interlock control. Okay, now we're looking for this, and if we get that, we're going to jump conditionally, and let's just back all of this up, get rid of all that, and we're going to jump to generation exit. Whoop, not generatoin, generation exit. All right. Otherwise, we're going to jump unconditionally to cooldown mode. Now we need, we've got our stabilize exit here, so let's just rename that to generation exit. And if we get it, we're going to set our generation transition. We don't have a timer to reset. I'm not trying to set a breakpoint TIA portal, so quit asking me about TIA portal, or I'm not trying to set a breakpoint TIA portal, so stop asking me about breakpoints. Once we get here, we're going to set generation transition. And is there anything else we need to do? I don't think so. So then we'll just run right into cooldown mode. And I think that's how we had the other exits. So yeah, we do what we need to do, and then we just let it run right into the next mode. And let me fix my spacing a little bit between there, because that looks like hammered garbage. Okay, so there we go. 2 spaces in between, 2 spaces in between. There we go. It's what separates men from animals. All right, so that's going to be real simple. Then we come to cooldown mode, and now we're setting our PID up for RPMs again, and looking for a cooldown RPM as a set point. So I know we did some sets up here in warm-up. I'm just going to copy those, bring them down, and you know, actually maybe I just copy my whole warm-up routine, because I would imagine that's going to be pretty similar to the cooldown. So let's come up here, and we don't need all that logic up there, but we'll take everything up to this point. And let's come down into cooldown, and let's just paste that in. Nice. Let's back that up and get it on the same line. Okay. So there's one control that we're missing here, and that's resetting a transition. So I don't even need to copy that. Come on, it's just one letter. So yeah, where's cooldown? All right, put that back. Okay, R space, come back. And it's not going to let me type it out because this thing's just difficult as hell sometimes. So let's take all this and Control X to cut it, and then paste it here because it just will not let me hit enter in there before that and put that on a different line. Alright, so now we're loading our cooldown RPM. So we're moving that into the baffle, and then we're putting RPM in for the input. That's good. And then we're going to, are we setting and resetting anything? I don't think so. We're setting up the PID, and nope, then we're just going straight to a timer and waiting for our oil temp to come down. Simple. So these sets, gone. And here's what we're actually going to do. We're going to load the oil temp, and we're going to load the cool down oil temp set point, and we're going to look for it to be less than. And if it is, we're going to jump to cooldown time, which we will create right here. And we need a new timer. The last timer that we used was 34. So this one I think will be 35. No, it looks like we've used a 35. We copied our reset and we didn't update that, so that needs to be 35. And then this needs to be 36. And yeah, it likes that. And let's make sure we set our reset up as 36 as well. I think we've got that. And we need to set this reset here. And let's make sure we've got those. So on the last one, 35, 35, and 35. That all looks good. Okay, so now we can focus just on our cooldown. And assuming that we come into cooldown time, we're going to convert a set point. And that's going to be our cooldown delay set point. And we need a new TI for that. So that's going to be TI5, which we'll define as a local time. And why in my head do I think that we already used a 5? We've got a 3 and 4 there, a 1 and 2 there. Nope, I guess not. So 5 it is. And when we come into our timer, that's going to be TI5 on the preset, TI6 on the elapsed, which is now defined, and instead of warm-up delay trigger, we're going to cool down delay trigger. And we'll define that as a local bool. Okay, and then we need to go to cooldown exit, which we will copy and paste onto the label. And then we're going to jump to idle mode otherwise. Once we get to cooldown exit, we're going to set our transition, cooldown transition. And once we get to idle mode, we're going to reset our cooldown transition. Okay, and in idle mode, that's not the only thing we're going to reset. We're also going to reset, That's what I think we're missing in cool down mode. I don't think I got rid of our interlock, did I? Yeah, that's the first thing up there is we need to reset our interlock. That's important. So cool down, reset the generation transition, reset station interlock control. Very important. And let's, well, I don't need to copy it. Come down here, reset that station interlock control just because it's important. I'm doing it redundantly. We need to set our brake. And something I just realized, I don't think we're disabling our brake for warm-up, so we need to go back and add that into all of our paradigms. Don't let me forget, once I get done setting up this idle mode, I'll jump back in and do that. And actually, so that I don't forget, I'll just put a little error right there to remind me. So the other things we're resetting are our baffle control, and we're resetting our oil pump VFD control. Okay, so 3 resets and 1 set. I think that's correct for idle mode. And I think that's all for idle mode, isn't it? Yeah, a set and 3 resets and we're done. Okay, let's fix our screw up on that brake control. So once we come up into our warm-up mode, we need to reset, and it'd probably be smart if we do that before, even though it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But just to be clear, let's put that up here above all of this. So I'm going to Control X, reset our brake, not bark, but brake control. Then I'll put our loads back in there. Okay, so now we're disabling our brake on warm-up mode, and I'm going to come into modes for ladder. I've already got function block open and STL, and I'm going to work through that in those as well. That's an easy setup. So coming in here, once we start this thing, warm-up mode, so let's put this here, and again we're going to make sure that we're in warm-up mode, and if we are in warm-up mode we want to call in a reset for our brake control. Got it. So there, see, that was easy. We're done with ladders, and let's come over here to our function blocks. Come up to warm up. On the trigger, we're starting that. And here's where we're doing our sets. And I'm just going to, right here, add a reset. And that's going to be our brake control. Got it? That was easy also. I'll leave that open for reference, and let's go to STL. And if we're in warm-up mode then, and we're going to have our brake control, colon equals 0 semicolon. And we're done with that. See, I told you that part would be easy. Now we want to be back in our STL. We've got our idle set up. Now we need to check our end of line, and this is where we're going to set our fault mode. So let's go ahead and we need to start evaluating alarms. So and we want to look for an e-stop alarm, and we're going to look for our brake failure alarm. Got it? Or we're going to look for our overcurrent alarm, or we're going to look for our overspeed alarm, or we're going to look for our high oil temp alarm, or we're going to look for our oil high flow alarm, or we're going to look for our oil low flow alarm. And if that's true, we're going to set fault mode. Okay, and there, that was pretty simple. And if we come through here and none of those are true, we're going to come down here to false, and we'll set that value into our fault mode instead. So I think that's got us on all of this logic.